Hi, I'm Mr. Kangas, and today we're going to be looking at Chapter 5, Section 3. And in particular, we're going to be looking at how to multiply negative fractions and how to multiply with mixed numbers. To start with negative fractions, they actually don't function any differently than with negative whole numbers. The rules essentially are different signs, and you get a negative answer. Same signs, you get a positive answer. So for example, negative 3 times positive 2, those are different signs, gets you a negative answer. 3 times 2 is still 6. Same thing happens with fractions. If I have a negative 1/3 times a positive 1/2, negative times a positive always gets me a negative answer. Then you go through and you multiply the two fractions normally. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. So I get negative 1/6 for my answer. Really doesn't get much more complicated than that. Like I said, follow the same rules that you would with whole numbers when you're multiplying with fractions. The only time that you might get tripped up a little bit is if you see a negative on both the numerator and the denominator. If that happens, this is actually a positive fraction, because fractions are division problems. This means negative 1 divided by negative 2. And when you divide two negatives, you get a positive answer. So this fraction represents a positive number. Normally you don't see something like this. This is not typical. If we want to represent a positive fraction, you typically will see two positive numbers in the numerator and the denominator. If you want a negative fraction, you'll typically see just one negative sign to the left of the fraction. Now, to multiply mixed numbers, such as 2 and 4 over 2, or how about we do 2 and 3/5, times 5, or 1/5. We're going to do 2 and 3/5 times 1/5. Now if you want to multiply these together, you're going to want to turn your mixed number into an improper fraction. So you do the denominator times so you do the denominator times the whole number. 5 times 2 is 10. Then take that product and add it to the numerator. So 10 plus 3 is 13. And you keep the denominator the same, so you have 13/5. Another way to think of that, another way to do it, or to think about it, is when you have 2 and 3/5, the denominator of 5 is telling you that it takes 5 numbers or 5 pieces or 5 parts to make one whole. So if you have 2 whole, that means you have 2 sets of 5, because each set of 5 equals 1 whole according to that denominator. So the 2 whole actually represents 2 sets of 5. That's why we do the 5 times 2, because that gives the 10. The 2 sets of 5 are equal to 10. The numerator represents the pieces that you have towards a whole. So we have 3 out of 5 pieces towards the whole. So the 2, like I said, represents 2 whole. 1 whole is represented by 5. So if you have 2 whole, that means you have 10. That's where the multiplication comes in. Okay, by doing 5 times 2, it tells you how many pieces your whole represent. So the 2 whole actually represent 10. The pieces represent 3, which is why we add the 3 afterwards, because we find out how many pieces the 2 whole represent, which is 10, and then we add the 10 pieces to the 3 pieces that we have in the numerator, to get 13. And 5 still represents our whole. So that's why 5 is still on the denominator. 5 still represents one whole. Because 5 goes into 13 2 whole times, and there are 3 out of 5 left over. So once you've converted your mixed number into an improper fraction, you just multiply like you normally would, so straight across. If there's any cross canceling or vertical reduction to be done, do that now, if that is the way you like to do it. I typically suggest that because it most of the time makes the problem easier. Otherwise, just go straight across. 13 times 1 is 13. 5 times 1 is 25. And so that is how you would multiply a mixed number times a fraction. Now, if you wanted to do two mixed numbers together, you would just turn both mixed numbers into improper fractions and then multiply straight across. So that's really all there is for this section. That was multiplying negative fractions and multiplying mixed numbers. In the next video, we'll be taking a look at multiplying algebraic fractions.